You know, as human beings, we don't like change. We like when things are predictable. It makes us feel comfortable. And I guess that's the one good thing we can take about Obama's recent behavior after the church shooting. He is being predictable. He does what he always does. He never lets a tragedy go unexploited. Immediately after the shootings, the first things out of his mouth are, guns are too easy to get in this country, and things like this don't happen in other places in the world. Well, really? Guns are too easy to get? Why shouldn't it be easy to exercise a right? I mean, we already have to fill out forms and go through background checks, etc. under most circumstances when you buy a gun, and that's the only right I can think of that we have to do that for, where we have to prove that we are worthy of the right before we can exercise it. So it ain't that easy to get a gun. And two, doesn't happen in other places in the world? You mean except like in Norway where a guy goes crazy and shoots like 67 people? You mean other than that place in the world? You mean except in a lot of African nations where terrorists seize schools or malls, etc., and shoot women as they're shopping or children as they lay in their beds? You mean except in those places in the world? Except in France where terrorists go in and shoot 11 journalists in a newspaper just because they wrote cartoons about Muhammad? You mean except in that place in the world? I guess you mean other than places like Belgium, where they shot up a Jewish museum, or in Denmark, where a guy shot up an art exhibit, and both of them killed several people. Or I guess you mean in France again, where a guy rolled up to a school and opened fire and killed 4 people. I guess you mean except in all of those places in the world. Not to mention things like in China, where a few men armed with machetes were able to kill over 30 citizens and seriously wound over 100 more. And let's not even get into bombings and other types of attacks that happen in Europe and Asia, etc. all the time. Because I'm sure you don't mean those. Nothing else like that ever happens anywhere. It just happens here. We're the only place that has bad things happen. Because we all know it's guns' fault. If we didn't have guns, racists wouldn't be violent if they didn't have guns. There'd be no tragic deaths if we didn't have guns. No one would ever face a tragedy. But, that's crap. Racists are going to be violent racists without guns, and tragedy is never going to be avoidable. Now, I'm not trying to belittle the deaths of the people in this church. Every time someone loses their life like this, it's a horrific tragedy. But let's keep things in perspective. That same day that those 9 people died in that church, 12 times that number of people died on the highways in car accidents. Those are tragedies also, and those could have been avoided too. But that's not even what I want to make this video about, going off on a little bit of a tangent here. What I want to talk about is when people like Obama and Rachel Maddow, etc., when they say, just a few simple, reasonable restrictions could have stopped this. Well, what I want to know is what restrictions would have stopped this? This guy was a legal gun owner. He bought the gun in a legal manner. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't declared psychotic, etc. He had a right to own this gun. So what reasonable restriction could you impose that would stop people that haven't done anything wrong yet from buying a gun? Are we going to start applying racial sensitivity tests? And if someone seems like they might be a jerk, they can't have a gun? Well, that doesn't seem very fair to me. It doesn't seem like that would fly with people if you actually said that out loud. Are we going to say people that earn under a certain amount of money are more likely to be racist or more likely to be angry? So we can't let those people have guns. So are we going to impose an income limit on buying a gun? Well, I don't think most people would go for that if you said that out loud. Are we going to start doing it by race? Or are we going to start saying, statistically, certain races commit more violent crimes than others, so we can't let them have guns? Well, people definitely wouldn't go for that if you said that out loud. So what are these reasonable restrictions? What are these reasonable restrictions that will stop people that are legal law-abiding citizens that haven't done anything wrong yet from having a gun before they choose to do something wrong? I'm tired of people just saying reasonable restrictions and then being let off the hook, not being pushed to say, well, what is reasonable? What are these reasonable restrictions that are actually going to stop these tragedies? Because the reality is there isn't a reasonable restriction that would do that. The only thing you can do is take away everyone's rights completely. There's always going to be someone that abuses a right. You don't take the rights away from everybody because of that tiny minority. You allow everyone to exercise those rights, and then you punish the people that do wrong. It's just like I said a few minutes ago about people dying in car accidents every year and how that could be avoided. Well, if you were to say to people, well, everyone should stop driving because of the few people that drive recklessly, people would laugh at you. They would scoff. They'd be like, I'm not losing my rights because some jerk can't obey the speed limit. I have a right to drive my car. And then there's some people that will scoff and say, well, cars serve a purpose and guns don't serve a purpose. Cars are necessary. They have to get us from place to place. Well, you know what else can get you from place to place? Light rail can get you from place to place. We can start spending all that money we spend on infrastructure, roads, etc. on light rail. And everyone can just walk out of their house, get on a light rail, go where they need to go. Still, people are getting from place to place. Nothing shuts down. But you eliminate that risk. You eliminate that X factor of the individual being able to exercise free will while they exercise a right, because we all know that's too risky. And also, if you think guns don't serve a purpose, and I'm talking beyond even hunting and things like that, if you think guns don't really serve a purpose and an armed citizenry doesn't serve a purpose, well, then you've never been to a country where the citizens don't have the right to defend themselves, and I hope you never have to go to one. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, why are you picking on Obama? He just has convictions and he believes this stuff. He doesn't believe this stuff. He does this because it's what he's ordered to do. Now, people love to talk about how, oh, the Bushes, they were owned by the oil industries. They were owned by the power industry, and that's true. They were. I won't deny that at all. But Obama is just as owned as they are. He is just a slave to his corporate masters as they were to their corporate masters. The only difference is the patches on his sponsor jacket would be a little bit different. Instead of being oil and power and energy, it would be big medical and insurance companies, etc. But he's still just as owned as the Bushes were. And the insurance companies and the big medical industries, they don't want you to have guns. They don't want you to have the ability to injure yourself. They don't want to pay for your care. They don't want you to have any individual freedoms whatsoever. They want you to live under the thumb of big government. So of course they don't want you to have guns. So of course he's going to do as he's told and exploit every chance he gets to take them out of your hands. And he's going to want to do it with buzzwords like reasonable restrictions without explaining those reasonable restrictions. So I guess my whole point of this video is I'm tired of letting people get away with just saying reasonable restrictions would solve this problem. Anytime you hear someone say that, push them. Make them say, what are those reasonable restrictions? What would have stopped this? Make them say out loud what would have actually stopped it. Because that's going to do two things. It's going to make some people that haven't really thought think, and they're going to be like, oh, I guess it wouldn't really stop it. There's nothing we really could do to stop this. It's inevitable. With freedom comes risk. We can't stop that. And the second thing it's going to do is it's going to make these people that really want to take your guns away from you say out loud that they really want to just take your guns. And once they actually have to say these things out loud, you're going to find it's going to be much easier to combat them. Because it's really hard to contradict the things that people aren't willing to say. But once they start saying these awful things, people are going to see what they're really about, and people are not going to support them. You ain't even my real dad.